Hey everyone, we're back for part 4, the final part in this series. Took me a little while to get to this one, and I actually had a lot of comments on YouTube and on Reddit just about, hey, this is all working except I have this one issue, and it is something I've alluded to that we are going to fix, as well as a couple other fun add-ons to this approach. So the first thing I want to go over is, and I'm going to show it and explain a little bit better. But there is a problem with this approach if you are using path-based routing. So what is that? Well, generally a Flutter web app by default, we can just turn this off to show you. It uses fragment-based routing. And you'll see that in the URL here, we have this hash bang, and that's fine. And if you are okay with doing that, you can completely ignore this part because this is going to solve when you don't use hash bangs. But I do recommend not using the fragmented routing. The routes just look cleaner and, just feels more like a website, I guess, when it doesn't have those hashes. So let me show you what that looks like if you're not familiar. Basically, it's just going to be the same thing, but without a route. Now, just for some context, before recording this, I kind of reworked our just main application. It's super simple. It's no longer a counter app. All it really is 2 routes, and we're using just named routes, but this approach works with Go Router, with auto route, with really any routing package that uses actual URLs. But I want to just keep this like really simple and not be like, you need to add this whole other library and confuse people. So we're just using like the built-in one, which basically lets you do these named routes. Again, don't recommend doing this. I think using something like auto router or Go Router is going to be better, but it works for our use case. So you'll see here now, when I do turn on set URL path strategy, the URLs now no longer have the hash in it, and all that is good. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy this just so I can explain the situation. So let's just increment our version to 10, and we will push this up. Also, that doesn't matter. Yeah. Commit -m, URL path, push. While that's deploying, I will explain a couple things here. So in order to enable this set path URL strategy, in case you're not familiar, there is something you have to do now. Originally, you had to add, there was a third-party package you would have to allow this, but it's now been completely integrated within the Flutter SDK. But you have to basically put Flutter web plugins as one of your dependency, but rather than putting a version number like you normally would, you just do SDK Flutter. So similar to when you're doing like the localizations or various other things, the testing, that kind of stuff. It's just saying use Flutter. But you need to have that, and then you still have to do a pub get. And then basically all we do in our main.dart is include that package right here, Flutter web plugins, and we run set URL strategy before we run the app. And that'll basically tell Flutter how to handle routing and the path in the URL. So let's see if this is deploying. I have it open here. We'll go to our actions. We should see the URL path deploying. And okay, we're building the Flutter app right now. All right, looks like we're just finishing up here, and let's actually go to our new website. And here we have our new one. And here's the problem. Because now that we're using, this wouldn't happen again if you were using hash-based routing or fragment routing or whatever you want to call it. But basically, it kind of changes the URL here. Now, technically, everything works, but this is not nice because if someone ever copied this, it would basically be like, hey, here's this version of the app, which and the whole point of this is to keep people having the most up-to-date one. It also looks really ugly. We don't like that. So how do we solve that? And this is based on a GitHub issue I came across through the same article that inspired this. In fact, the original poster of that article put me in the right direction, and some people on YouTube and Reddit, I've already pointed them in this direction because I knew I wouldn't, they needed it now, and I was like, well, I'll eventually get this covered, and now we're covering it. So what do we have to do here? Well, we're going to make a custom strategy. So instead of using this default one, we need to kind of make our own here. So what we're going to do is find a good place to put this. In our case, because this is a very basic project, we're just going to put it here, and I'm just going to call it custom path strategy, and you can call it whatever you want. And this is something I just pulled from GitHub. So I'm not going to type it out, and I'm going to try and explain it. But ultimately, I don't even, to be completely honest, I'm not even sure exactly everything about how this works. But basically, it's implementing or extending the hash URL strategy, which is kind of like the default one that Flutter is using. And it's making some overrides on the get path, ensuring a leading slash, cool, and it's preparing the external URL. So it's just overriding some of the stuff that this has. Again, not gonna try and be like, I know exactly what's happening here, because I just kind of pulled it and tried it and it fixed my problem. So first we'll make that. Then in our main.dart, instead of that, we're going to just do use URL strategy. Is that what it is? Set URL strategy is what we actually want. And then here it's requiring us to pass in something. And of course, we're going to pass in our custom one. So we just need to pass in the class and actually make it with the parentheses after it, to make an instance of that class, and then of course we want to import it. So now let's put that in, and let's go to our pubspec, because we will need to increment our build number again, of course, to test this out. And we will do that by committing custom URL strat, and we'll push that through. All right, let's go to our GitHub actions to make sure that we are getting it. Hit the home key. Go back to our button here, and here we are building. I do want to say that I have been now using this approach on a couple projects, and it's been honestly a big life changer. 2 reasons I'd say. One, it's just dealing with the cache and people making sure people have the most up-to-date version. It's been super handy. And I'm loving it. And then secondly, having this all happen in the cloud, although I have done some, CI CD stuff with Flutter Web on things like Vercel and something else that I'll get to at the end of this project, at the end of this video. It's nice just to kind of have it so when something is merged with main, it just kind of happens in the cloud, on someone else's machine, so I can get back to work on my stuff and not wait around for it to build. So yeah, it's been super handy, and I'm hoping people watching this, and this video's got quite a bit of views for my channel at least, and quite a bit of comments, and people have been asking stuff, so I hope that it's also helping you. Okay, so we are good here. Now we have to make sure when we do want to refresh this, we don't keep that in the URL, because then it will, I think, actually I don't even know what would happen. I think it would try and use that old version. But let's see. Okay, complete job. I think it's completed. Cleaning up orphan process. Okay, let's see if this worked now. Let's just view the source, make sure that we are getting the number 11 apparently, and let's visit the deep page. So now look. We have, we actually saw it already. It didn't actually redirect there. So that's all it is. That's all there is to it. And of course, this code is linked in the comment, in the description of the video. So you can go and grab this thing or find, the issue I found on GitHub about this. And, thank you for that person who solved this for us. Because that would have been just a complete stopper for this approach if it had to put that in the URL. And I didn't want to go back to hash bangs with, because it was an existing project that people already maybe had bookmarks, and the backend already knew when sending emails to put not to have a hash bang in it. I didn't want to refactor that. So I'm glad we were able to figure that out. So there you have it. It's good. And again, that will work with auto router, that will work with Go router, any routing package that you want to use. It's really just something that modifies the way that the browser and the URL bar sort of interact with the web application. All right. So I'm glad we got that out of the way, because I feel like that was a big thing that people were asking about. I do have a couple other things to touch on, though, that are nice to haves. The next thing we're going to get into is, hey, how can we send an update to our users, essentially? Say someone, just to take a step back, this is working great for when someone comes to the site, they're always going to have the most up-to-date version. That's the approach here. They're always going to have the most up-to-date. Doesn't matter about their browser cache. It's going to just be good to go. But what about someone who's on the app as we speak, the web app? Maybe they're doing something in it and they just keep it running. And sometimes people just keep a million tabs open, right? Like their computers can handle it, and they just keep them open and they come back to it. If they never actually do a refresh or like visit it in a new tab, they're never going to have the new version. And there's no way really around that other than kind of like notifying them and whatever. So that's what we're going to introduce next. And again, I'm going to do this in just bare bones raw Flutter way. In a real world project, I would, probably integrate this same pattern into my Riverpod state management or some kind of, something that really like plays well with the architecture. And you can, of course, adapt this to however you want. But we're just going to be using essentially a stateful widget that is able to, check for an update. So let's get into that next. All right, let's close some things. And we're also going to just put this in our root of our lib, again, for simplicity's sake. And we're just going to call this new version checker .dart. And in this case, we're going to make a stateful component, not a stateless, stateful widget. And yeah, we'll call this new version checker. Okay, so our new version checker needs to do a few things. So what we need to do is in our init state, we are going to set some stuff up. So I'll start typing init state. And in here, we are going to essentially start a function. So I'll just call it start version polling. And again, this is a bare bone ways of doing it. If you really wanted to be fancy, there's probably a way to do this with like with like WebSockets or something, but honestly, this isn't a big deal. We're not even going to be calling a server. We're really just going to be calling a JSON file that's being statically hosted. And you can set, the duration of this to be something that you call every 30 seconds or, every 5 minutes. It's really up to you and how, how much you want to be checking for these updates. So we have this. We can make this a method by going create method. And I like to just put it up here. So to start version polling, first of all, we want a timer because we want basically a timer that's going to be periodically running, again, every 30 seconds or whatever we want. And we'll just call it like version checker timer. Very good name. In our start version polling, we want to essentially, when we start it, we're actually going to cancel it in case this is called multiple times. And we can do that, dot cancel. Is it cancel? Version, what the heck? Thought it was cancel. Timer, version checking timer. What happened? Maybe there's like a, did I get timer from the wrong package? Yes, I did. Timer needs to come from, where does timer come from? Isn't it just like Dart async? Yeah, Dart async. It was coming from some weird thing. Okay, that was weird. So we're going to cancel it, but it could be null, as it would be on the very first time. So just putting a question mark here like that, make this a little bit bigger. We will see, we'll be able to like only call it if it's not null. That's just a nice way to do that. So we just want to cancel it in case this gets called multiple times. We don't want multiple instances of the timer going. So we'll do that first. Before we forget, anytime that we are doing something with like a timer, we obviously want to also handle the dispose method of this. So let's just do that before we forget. It's basically the same code I'd want here. So when this is disposed, we also want to cancel the timer. Otherwise, yeah, we could have, if we have multiple instances of this, we'd have like multiple timers going and it would be a mess. Okay, so now we cancel it and then we actually need to set up our timer. So we can just go this equals timer dot periodic. And for our duration, this is something you could pass into the widget in case like you want it to be customizable, but I'm just going to do, for our case, 5 seconds. I think that's a little bit too quick. You'll probably want to do like 30 seconds or something, but I don't want to have people waiting around for this to fire off. So we'll just do it, more often. And then what we want to do is, let's see, so we have that. Then we need to actually have a function, which we don't care about the parameter in it. And this will be an asynchronous function. It seems I lost something there. And this is what is going to be called every time that happens. So what we want to do now is check if there is a new version available. So let's make that code. And it's yeah, let's just do that. It's going to be a future void. It's not going to, oh wait, it's actually going to be a future bool because it's going to be checking, hey, there's a new one. And we'll just call it check if new version is available, which is like basically sounds like I'm writing Java right now. But this will also be async. So in here, what do we want to do? Well, we need to fetch a remote version. We need to figure out that. So let's just kind of stub in something right here. We want to find out what is the remote version, and it's going to be equal to await. And let's just make a function called fetch remote version, for instance. I actually don't need that underscore there. So we'll get the version, and we want to check our current version. So current version equals. Now, this is something that we basically need to, when we ship our apps, although we have it in our pubspec, we're going to want to make sure that the version itself is tracked in our code as well. So let's just put it here. There's probably a place you'd want to do it, that's probably better. So let's just make sure this lines up with our pubspec. Now, I will say that this is not the greatest way. So let's just do 0.0.11, and let's just call this like current version equals this. And if we have time, I'll show you how you can actually parse this and pull it and make it an environment variable in your project. That way you should just have one source of truth of like, what's the version of your app? But that's out of the scope, at least of what we're doing right now. So just imagine, at least for now, anytime you update this number, make sure you update it in here too. Otherwise we'll have a problem. And this should just be, this without the plus, because that already gets parsed and pulled. It's basically the folder that's going to be on your S3 bucket or wherever you're hosting. So we want to check if the current version, which is this right here, current version, if it is equal, sorry, hang on. Sorry, we want to check if the remote, if remote does not equal null, because maybe something's going to go wrong with this check, and we don't want to just forcefully do it. Oops, that should be an if statement. This is an if statement I'm trying to write now. If remote does not equal null, and remote does not equal current version, which we have at the top here, that constant, that's basically, we're going to return true. There's a new version. Otherwise, we're going to return false. Now, of course, astute viewers probably know we could make this a little bit cleaner by really just going return this right here, which we'll do. So that's either going to, if it's basically going to return whether that, if this is true, then we got it. I'm going to keep it like this for the example code base because I think it's just a little bit cleaner to, understand what's happening here. Okay, fetch remote version. We need a function for this. So this is going to be something that goes and essentially checks, hey, what is the remote version? I'm calling it remote because it's like what the, the hosting provider, basically is saying the latest version is. So how do we get that? In this case, we're going to use do. You could use HTTP. I'm going to add that now. Flutter pub do. Basically, we just need some kind of networking library to be able to, get this. So we are just installing do, and let's just make sure we have it. I can probably just start typing do and do an import. Yeah, we'll import do. Cool. Okay, so what we want to do is basically making a GET request to that version.json file that's stored in our hosting environment. And just to see this, I believe I can just go here. So we actually see that we have this version here, right? Just version.json. And that was part of our deployment process way back a couple of videos ago. And I alluded to this, that like, this is something we're going to want. And just to refresh you how that is being put there in our deploy.yaml, we see that we actually grep the version from the pubspec.yaml, and we do a bunch of like cutting and stuff. And that's just to get everything before the plus sign. And then we echo that out and into a file, and we actually make sure that that file gets moved to the right spot. So it's put in the web output originally, but then we actually upload it to just the AWS bucket / version.json. All right, so cool. So it's there, and we'll be able to access it. So for here, again, I'm using do. You might have to adapt this if you want to use HTTP. In fact, you will have to adapt it, but it's a pretty basic thing. I just really like do. So we want to use do, and we're going to pass in some base options here. And the base options, we're going to have our base URL. And in this case, I'm just going to hard code, obviously, our server here. So we just want to have that just like that. And we want to put in some headers as well. So the headers we want, first of all, are just the basic, hey, this is going to be a JSON request. I guess we have to import that. That comes from Dart.io. So we want to say, hey, we want to get, it's going to be application JSON. And another thing that's really nice to do is set the cache control, just to say no cache, just so it's like, give me the freshest version, like, don't try and cache it for me. Okay, cool. So we set up DO there. And then right here, we actually call on that get, and we want to get on the path. Remember, we already have the base URL, so we just have to do version.json right on the base here. And something else we can do to like really make sure that it's not cached is we can actually put a little get parameter here of t equals or anything, v equals, whatever. And basically what we're saying is, hey, we want to get this file, but like this is just a common cache busting approach that you can do in any kind of web development, where you say, you basically put a timestamp of right now. In fact, this is a millisecond since the epoch timestamp, and we'll just make sure that like we're not going to cache this at all. Like we want the most up-to-date version. So this is the actual file name, and putting this get parameter here of $t equals, and it means unless someone else has called the exact same one, which means they have to request at the exact same time, in which case like it's going to be fine. It's going to be very up to date. So just making sure everything is good here. So that's going to do our request. Then what we want to do is return response.data. Return response.data, which technically could be null. And we're just going to say version. Now I'm putting a question mark here because if this is null, because something went wrong or whatever, like we don't want to like throw an error and break everything, because like we definitely don't want the app to break because like the version checker failed. So this could, and in fact, we should probably say this is a future that returns string, but the string could be null, right? So there's our fetch remote version. Okay, so here, that's why we go like this, and remote could be null. So, if it doesn't equal null, basically if it's null, we're going to say, hey, like there's not an update because something went wrong and we can't tell you the update, but maybe in 5 more seconds, things will go better. There we go. So we have this now. I think that's everything. So let's just walk through this. We init state, we start the version poll. Oh, one more thing we need to do. The build on this is going to return a placeholder. We don't want that. We actually just want to return like a sized box. We want this to be like super invisible, and it's just something that exists. Again, you can do this exact same pattern in something like block or provider, whatever state management you're using, or some other cool way. And let me know in the comments the way you want to do it. But this is just like a really like basic way without us having to adhere to one specific state management library. And then everyone in the comments, half the people in the comments are like, I hate Riverpod. We're not using it. We're just doing it this way. Okay, cool. So the last thing we just have to do, and then we will walk through this, is in our main.dart. And in fact, see, this one's a little bit complicated because generally when I'm making an app, I sort of have like a base app container that everything else lives in, and that's where I'd put that. But in our case, we're just going to essentially put this in. Actually, wait, is there still a builder in? Yeah, there is. Okay, let's do it this way. This is the way we want to do it. What the builder will do is allow us to essentially wrap around something. So this takes a build context and a child. And what we could return here is essentially like a column. You could do it with a stack too. And children, we're just going to put child as this. We're also going to wrap this in a widget expanded. And child could be null. That's weird. Let's just put an exclamation mark there to fix that. And then here, we're going to put our new version checker, which won't take up any room. So really, it's the columns like really just a way that we can lay this out on the screen. But yeah, this is a way that we can essentially get this on every page without us having to go through. So the child in this case is going to be, this or this, depending on where we're on, in case that's confusing to you. Okay, so let's save everything and let's see if this is kind of working. And we'll go to our local version first, of course. And I'm going to open up the inspector, go to our console. Actually, we'll go to our network and let's see if it's even working. I'm just going to put all here and and then yes, once we're going to walk through it. In fact, we're going to walk through it now because it doesn't seem to be working and I'll probably spot the error. Okay, so we have our new version checker. Okay, cool. It could be that we installed a new package. Okay, let's take a step back. we are instantiating essentially a variable called version checker timer that is going to be our timer that runs. We init state, we do the start version polling, and I think, I already know, I see the problem. On our dispose, we obviously want to cancel it. We never actually called the code here. So here's our version check timer. It's running. It's like every 5 seconds, it's firing this empty function. But what we really want to call here is check if new version is available. So let's just call that. We'll want to do more too. This isn't everything, but this should at least let us test if things are going. So let's refresh this. Now there's a weird thing happening where I lost my, let me just clear this out. I lost my little control panel here, which sometimes happens, and I think that means it might have not built the new version. So let's just, let's close this and let's start a build again, and we'll see why that happened. I will pause for a moment while that starts up. All right, we're back, and we happen to be seeing that about every 5 seconds, there's an XHR request to here, and what do we get back? We get back our version. Very nice. So yeah, this part's working. Now, obviously, there's not a new version yet, so we're not going to see that little updatey thing, but we also haven't really written the code to do the update. And in that case, let's add that stuff in right now. So really, we're just checking this, but we probably want to do something like, final... I'll just call it like update available is going to be equal to this, because this returns a Boolean, right? And what we want to do is if update available, then we're going to do some things. First of all, let's cancel our timer. There's no point to keep checking this, right? So we'll run the cancel there. Then we essentially want to kind of prompt the user. In my opinion, at least for most apps, we want to prompt them and say, hey, there's a new update available. We don't necessarily want to just refresh the page. They might be in the middle of something, and that would be annoying. How do we do that? We need to essentially have like a dialogue, right? So let's see. I need to know how to do this because I usually use a package or my own package for this kind of stuff. But we would do show, is it show dialogue, show alert dialogue? No, I think it's just show dialogue. Yeah, show dialogue, context. And we should probably do this check, if context.mounted, because if it's not mounted, we're going to have an issue with this context. I already have that check. Hey. Builder context, and here we'll return an about or a alert dialog. Yeah, and the title for this will be text of new version available, and the body. And you can of course do whatever you want here. This could be also a toast you put in the top right. It could be a lot of different things, and we can just say a new version is available. Would you like to reload the page? Something like that, right? And, we can have our confirm text. Is that what how does this work? Oh, yeah, it's like buttons, actions, but it should be here. We forgot a comma. So let's have our actions here. So we'll have a text button. And in this case, it will just do a navigator.ofContext.pop. This will be our cancel. So it's just going to pop with nothing in that. And we can do child text of no thanks. And we have an extra comma there. Let's just save this. And we need one more text button here. Oh, I see. It's everything looks weird. And this one can say, yes, please, whatever you want. And in this case, we're actually going to pop with something like true, because what we can do with this, we can go final should reload equals await. Something that's cool about show dialogues, or even pushing a route and stuff, as long as you await it, we can actually pass back, anything in here. It could be, a Boolean value, it could be a string, it could be whatever, and that will come in here. Now, it will be dynamic because we'd have to actually set up our own classes and stuff to make this. But the good thing is we can say if should reload is equal to true specifically. So even if it's null, this won't fire. If it's false, it won't fire. And we also have to consider, like, we could just put false in here, which I'm going to do. That's fine. But someone could dismiss this, right? They could dismiss it by the escape key. They could dismiss it by clicking outside of it. Now you can do barrier dismissible equals true or equals false. And then, the only way to get rid of this is clicking this. Whatever. I'm just showing that, like, we should do it this way and not just assume it's a Boolean. It could be a null value. And then here we would do our actual, like, reload page function, right? Now, the way we want to reload the page, this is a little bit of a sticky topic because the way I like to do this is pretty complicated just because when I'm making like a Flutter app, usually like web is part of the equation, but I'm also deploying to like iOS and Android. So I don't simply want to generally actually have calling JavaScript code to be like, window.refresh or whatever the code is. Generally, I do things with sort of and I have a video that covers this, from a long time ago, where you build out something that will dynamically use a different kind of functionality when it's web versus native. Now, for our case, we're just going to assume this is just a web only thing. And of course, if you have questions about how you can make, this code, because the code I'm going to put in here in theory will just make it so you cannot actually build this as an iOS app anymore. But there are definitely ways around that. It's just a bit of overkill and out of the scope now. And I've already covered it. So find that video. So what do we want to do here? We're going to reload the page. So we're just going to do it this ugly way. I'm going to import HTML as HTML. You're going to see all this stuff here. Again, this is, not the best way to do it, especially if you, are trying to support things, but it's going to let us do this. And we can just do html.window.location.reload. And saying all these things are deprecated doesn't matter. It's going to work for our case. Okay, so should reload. We're just going to call that. Now, something else, just a nuance here, because you cancel the timer, even if someone puts no thanks, it's not going to prompt them again in 5 seconds, which is kind of what we want. Now, if they reload the page and come back, they're going to be on the new version anyways, so we're fine. But but in theory, like, they're only going to be prompted this once per session. I have this, it's weird. I don't know why I'm seeing this error right now. We have a mounted check. Oh, well. Is it supposed to be state.context instead? I don't know. Anyways, I don't care. We're good. Okay, so let's test this out. So this will take us a couple of deploys, right? For one, we need to make sure that our, let's just open up our pubspec. What version are we on? We're on 11. So let's put out 12 just to get that one. Now remember, because of the way we're doing this right now, and again, I might cover this, we just have to make sure up to those both places. So let's go and add commit-m version checker. Sure. And let's just get this version up and running. And then we'll actually put out an update and see if the auto update actually reflects. All right, the deploy is finished. I paused for you guys. We can see just by going to the version.json, we're at 12, so we know we're good. Let's go here. Let's check our network inspector. And I'll just clear it out as is. We should see version. There it is. Yeah. So it's checking it every whatever. And assuming we wrote our code properly, it should be running that code to check if it's the same and whatever. But of course it's the same because we need to do another deploy. So let's make a tiny change just to make it even more fun. So we'll go to our main.dart and what do we have? We'll just put some exclamation marks here. And we of course need to update our version. So we're going to 13 now. And again, I need to update it here too. Don't forget that. I think I will show you guys how to do that. Version update test. And I will pause again. And I'll try and unpause it just in time. So stand by. I'm unpausing just a little bit early, we don't want to miss this. We really don't want to miss this. So you can see it's still checking this version, but of course the version is the correct one. So it's not prompting us for that update. But here we go. Okay, let's come back here. So let's wait. It should just be finishing up now. And I hope I hope this works because we didn't, we could have actually tested this locally. It would have been difficult. We could have mocked it locally, I guess. Maybe we should have done that because now I'm like, why is it not showing up? Or is it still calling it? It should be. Okay, it says it's done. Let's just check to make sure that our version.json is 13 now. Yep, we should be getting it. 13 we changed here. 13 we changed here. Let's just double check our code. Something is going wrong. Okay, so update available. Check if new version is available. So if remote does not equal null, which in theory it's not, unless we made an issue with this. Let's see. Response.data version. Yeah, that's what this is, right? Yeah, version. This all looks good to me. True. Let's just see. This update available. If there's an update available, we cancel the timer. Maybe this context.mounted is getting in the way. Oh no. Okay, one moment. Actually, let's figure out how to debug this locally. So what I'm going to do just to test this in my local environment is in our right here, we're going to return. We're actually just going to return like 1.0.0. Let's pretend we got to our 1.0 version, and let's just make sure that this is showing up because it should be showing up, right? This is It's what the heck? My hot reload's breaking something, I swear. All right. Okay, so there is an error happening here. What is it? So okay, navigator operation requested a context that does not include a navigator. Why wouldn't it include a navigator? Let's see. So I think it's working. I mean, it's just this code for some reason isn't. This context, where does this context come from? It's coming from this, which this should have context because this is inside. Oh, it's not. I don't think, because we have this thing embedded actually above this this sort of thing. I kind of was just making up, the best way to do this on the fly. The reason is our new version checker is actually outside of this scope here of this, and it's because we're using this builder. So let's get rid of the builder. I think this is the reason. You could get around this by having a root context. Maybe that's a better way to do it. It doesn't matter because this isn't really the way you'd probably do it in your app. You would, already have, using a routing packet and stuff. So instead, we're just going to put the new version checker in our homepage. Let's just put it, we have this elevated button. Let's just have a column here. We'll make the main axis size .min, and then we'll just have our version checker there. And let's not worry about the deep page. You can put in your deep page yourself. Again, this is just really for explaining the process here. Okay, so let's just do a green arrow rebuild and go back here. And I think we should see in 5 seconds, there we go, new version available. If I go no thanks, it's not going to prompt me again. Nothing happened, but let's try it again. I think that rebuilt. Oh, there we go. There's our new version, and we can do yes, please. And we actually see that it does our window.reload. So that's going to work now. Yay. So unfortunately, with this change, I actually have to put out 2 versions. Now, locally, we're going to keep getting this because remember, we just hard-coded this value in the new version checker. Where was it? Remote version. Let's get rid of that and just return this as normal. So what I need to do, unfortunately, is deploy this twice again. So let's get this one going. I'm going to deploy. So while I am paused, I'm going to deploy version 14, and I'm also going to deploy version 15, and we'll come back before 15 gets up. 14 is the one that's going to give our browser like the new code that will have the auto updater, and when we put 15 out, it'll be the thing that will be like, hey, there's a new version. So I'm just going to pause, get that up, and not waste your time. All right, just intercepting here for a second. Version 14 is now up. And I've just started the deployment process of 15. So as soon as this one finishes, let's see, here we go. As soon as this one finishes, we should get that prompt and we should be able to celebrate. I will continue to pause and come back very soon. All right, coming back a little bit prematurely. I just don't want us to miss this. We're doing the Flutter build right now, which is just finishing. Okay, let's go back. So I'm hanging out on here. It's hopefully this is just going to work if I did everything correctly. There we are. Look at that. We have a new version available. Would you like to reload the page? And yes, please. So now we get this, and we should be on version 15 now. Let's just view the page source. We're seeing 15 as expected. And then when we're doing this version check, we'll see the next one come in, version, because it is saying it's 15 and it's equal to the one we've hard coded into our code base. We're not going to be seeing that prompt until another version comes out. Now, some things to note here. One is that we're just really checking if they're not equal. Which is fine, I think, in most cases. You could get really fancy and make sure the version is not, greater than or whatever by parsing this a little bit better and, actually checking the numbers and the semantic versioning. Something to think about. You could also, and I've done this on some projects, you could have almost like a mechanism for whether it's and this would require a bit of, some kind of backend configuration or some kind of remote sort of work where you have like required updates versus just like optional updates. So if there was like a huge breaking change, you might want to force people and like not let them do anything else potentially. I haven't really seen a use case for that in at least web. It's a little bit more, I think, in native, getting someone to upgrade is important because generally someone's just going to come back to the site. And now that we have this cache busting happening, like they'll be on their most recent version. So yeah, that's just some things to think about. Now, something I did allude to that I've decided in my head that I am going to show you how to do it because I think it's important. Because it's very easy to make this mistake, right? We had to update a number here, and we had to update a number here. That's not good. So what we're going to do is make it so that this is an environment variable. And by an environment variable, I mean it's going to be a constant that is available, that is created at build time and is available obviously in the runtime, but as a constant. So in order to do that, we're going to go to deploy. And where we do this build, where we're setting like base href, we're going to, and we can do this on another line because we have this slash here. We're going to go dart define, and I need to remember this, but we can just call it, version. I can call it like app version just to be like super specific. And then I think we just put something here. And let me just remember how to do this. So yeah, dart define, it's dart define equals, I think. Dart define equals, then the name of the thing, then equals again, and then we actually want to take our release. And how can we get that release? Well, we actually have access to it, and I'll just paste this in so I don't make a typo. We can actually get this by using a $, then 2 curly braces, steps.version.outputs.release. So because this is the name of the step, it's called version. We're accessing it through here. Outputs are anything that we're outputting here, and we actually can output it to GitHub output, which is helpful for later on. And then we specifically are taking that. So basically, we're going to dart define when we do the build to say, hey, here's the app version. And now back in our code, instead of having this current version here, we can actually get this value. So we're just going to make it a new thing called, or this is actually going to be a const called current version, because again, it's something that happens at build time. It can't ever change. And we can do string.from environment. And in this case, we want to use app version, and that will get us a string back. Now, there is potentially a case, so this will never be null. It's never be a null string, but it could be an empty string. You need to make sure you have the word const here. Saying unnecessary, but I've had issues before. Maybe it was just in a certain version of Flutter where like the environment variables wouldn't be pulled in without an extra const here. So maybe it's not needed, but I'm just going to keep this here because I know I've had a weird issue before. Now we could do something where, we check to make sure that it's not empty and whatever. But what I'm just going to do is also in this check, say if current version dot is not empty, because if that's empty, something went wrong with our thing. We don't want to trigger an app update because something went wrong in our build process or whatever. So now we're going to do that. We're going to save our deploy.yaml, and let's actually test this out just somewhere nice as well. Maybe I could just print this out, and let's just so we know. So current version, and and I will just get current version. So let's actually print this out, and Let's save that. Let's do a green arrow rebuild. Now, locally, we're not going to have this value because we're not putting it in, but let's just make sure at least like we're getting stuff. So we see in current version, it's just blank. Great. Now, because we're doing this Dart define thing, when we do our build, we will have that version in there. So that's basically it. We just need that, and we need to make sure our deploy script is Dart defining, the app version equaling to whatever that is. I'm going to put a trailing slash here, just so if we ever add anything else, we don't forget to have that there. Okay, so let's increment our version again in our pubspec. And now look, we just have one place to do it. We don't have to remember to do another spot. Git commit -m. Let's do a build or Dart define. And did I keep that? Yeah, I'm going to keep this in here because it'll be nice to actually see it, making sure it's printing out correctly. Dart define app version. Git push. So yeah, you probably don't need this const here. I'm just playing it safe right now. I think where I've seen this before is when it's actually like in a class or something like that, to be able to make sure it's a const. Okay, so let's go back to our deploy, and we should see a new one coming. And let's actually look at what's kind of happening here. It might even tell us stuff. Let's see. Set up job, set up Flutter. Yeah, it doesn't actually say what. Oh, that actually is going to happen here. So we might actually be able to see this in action. Let's see once it's right now it's not building our app, it's just setting up Flutter for us. Okay, so here we go, version. Okay, let's see. Let's open this up. Here we go. So you see it says Dart define app version equals 0. Oh no, it has a slash after it. Oh, that's going to be a problem. Why is there a slash after it? Why is there a slash after it? That shouldn't be the case. Or is that? I guess we'll find out when this finishes. Error, process execo, yeah. What was the error here? Type defined, base rate, href. What is the error? Process completed. No such file or directory. It's because, yeah, Dart define app version equals this. Okay, something is wrong. That's okay. Let's increment, just before we forget, just to 17. Just why not? And I'm going to look at this real quick. Oh, I just made a stupid error. That's just a forward slash, not a backslash. The forward slash is just saying, hey, this is the base href, and we want that. What we wanted here actually was a backslash, and that's just a way and you see in other places too, we do this backslash sort of thing, or that's a forward slash. Here's one right here, like a backslash here. And it's just a way that we can have a new line without actually being a new line instead of putting on one big line. And that was definitely our problem. So we want that, Yeah, that should be good. And that's where that other slash came from, because I did a forward slash because it's hard. It's hard. Coding's hard. Let's add these files. Commit -m, deploy fix. And you know what? Something that's great about this, when you make mistakes, if the build doesn't go through, it stops and users don't get the broken version. So that's kind of a nice thing about the way we have this running too. While this is going, because there's a couple other topics I wanted to touch on, one of them being if you are using Cloudflare, this is something you might want to put in your build process at the very end. And I have it here, just commented out. It's just another step that's going to purge the Cloudflare cache. Now, this is something you just will have to get your Cloudflare zone ID from Cloudflare, and you have to get your Cloudflare API token. Make those GitHub environment variables and whatnot. And basically, you just make a curl request to the different files that you want to purge. So we're basically just saying, hey, post to api.cloudflare.com, /ID, and then this purge cache command. And we have to pass in our authorization token, which is a secret. And then we just say, hey, it's JSON. And then we go, hey, these are the two files. And all we really care about is the index.html being purged and that version.json. Again, just for extra care. We really want to make sure these things work. Although I've been seeing that it's been, working totally fine. without this even in here. But I do recommend doing this if you're using Cloudflare and you have some kind of caching set up and everything. So you'll just make sure that like when this deploy finishes, Cloudflare won't hold onto your files, because caching is complicated. It happens at different layers, right? There's like the DNS layer, there's the actual like your S3 bucket, there's Cloudflare that might be, doing some caching, and then there's your browser too. So we have to really like, step in a lot of places to really like force things to, work properly. I'm going to keep this commented. But just keep in mind it's in there. It's in the code base. You just have to make sure you get these two things, and you'll be good to go. Your zone ID is basically like the domain's zone ID. It's right on the Cloudflare page. And then your Cloudflare API token, you just have to generate there. And again, put those in your GitHub secrets for your tasks. Okay, let's see if this worked. I hope this was the old one. Oh, yeah, it looks like it worked. And if we go back here, we see we have the updated version. Yes, please. And let's go to our console, because we should be printing out every 5 seconds. Once it actually loads, we should see this. And there we go, current version 0.0.17, which, should reflect with this right here if I refresh this 17. So we're good. Okay, cool. That's awesome. All right, so we're going to leave it there. I think that covers basically everything. Now, I did want to sort of touch on one other piece, because, this is complicated. Deploying web stuff is complicated. And with Flutter Web, the biggest thing that people complain about is things like SEO, right? Flutter can't, the way you're serving a page is a single page application. There's no like server-side rendering. And of course, there's no really like deep SEO. Like, you can SEO your root page, but it's going to be the constant everywhere. As an example, if I wanted to have, this page have some specific SEO data with it on my web application. So when people share it to iMessage or Slack or whatever, you actually get the proper image pulled and the text and all that kind of stuff. That's something that's very difficult to do in Flutter. It can be done. Now, that's why I built something a while ago, and you might be familiar with it. It's called Dashhost. It's in early access right now. Let me just go to it, dashhost.app, and you can sign up and join the Discord and all that kind of stuff. But it's basically a solution for hosting your Flutter web applications with SEO, using this concept called magic routes, and there's a lot of other cool stuff on the way. Just to show this really quickly as an example, let's just go to example.dashhost.app. This is just an example application I made to really test it out. So if we view the source of this page, we'll just get the basic, SEO that, was put in the index.html. So Dashhost example app, nothing magic happening here. You can do that now. But what happens when you view the source of character 1, for instance? So this is a Rick Sanchez. If you view the source of this, and whoa, something weird is happening here. If you view the source of that, and there wasn't something weird happening with the source, we actually are able to pull and get that data. So it's a really cool concept, and if we actually go to my Dashhost.app, I can kind of show you how it works. So I have, for instance, the example app hosted here, and this uses a lot of the same stuff that we've gone through in this series of the video in terms of the way the deployments happen, albeit a bit differently, but the same sort of idea, cache busting, all that kind of stuff, as well as the continuous integration. So you can essentially just connect your GitHub, and it will build the app for you in the background and deploy, the new version. And basically this idea of magic routes is, hey, we can have a magic route. There's static ones, and static ones are basically just like, at /about, we want to actually override the SEO to say, here's the title and here's whatever the description, here's this. We can also, upload a cool image, which I'm not going to actually do right now, for static route. And that's fine. And for like, your FAQ page or your about page or whatever is totally fine. But where the real power comes in, especially when there's like user generated content and you have a lot of like dynamic routes, we have these things called API-driven routes. So an API-driven route allows you to, similar in Flutter, in like a routing package, to say like character and then, ID placeholder. Anytime this route is found, we want to actually hit this API. So the API URL is rickandmortyapi.com/API/character, and then that same placeholder. And if we actually looked at this, for instance, if I go here just to explain this. This is the JSON that API. This could, of course, be your own API and whatnot. And of course, what we can then do is say, based on that data, we want the name of our SEO to be the name here. The title of our SEO to be using the key called name. So for instance, there's name right here. So it's going to actually pull that for us and show that. For the description key, we want to use the type. For image key, it's just image in this case. I chose just to use the gender as like the keywords key, but of course you could, do whatever there. And that's like, the basic implementation of this. It does work for, I'm working, one of our new customers on this is using Flutter Flow, and although there were some nuances we had to figure out, as well as like what version does Flutter Flow actually build to, and we figured that out. It works for people that want to like do more of the no code stuff. This will support it. It also does, although it's in complete even earlier than earlier access, we do support Firebase as well, so you can actually create a magic route that is static, API like we saw, or Firebase to actually use your a Firebase connection with to a real-time database or a Firestore database, whatever it's called. And then we also have a somewhat coming up soon feature that's super killer that I'm going to make a whole video on at some point. And that's when we're probably going to go out of early access, where, hey, you don't have to actually configure these yourself and you can do it in your Flutter application. But that's a future conversation, and we'll see it in a bit. So, check this out if you're interested, if you're, deploying, web applications that need some kind of SEO, or, honestly, it's not always SEO that you need, but you need some kind of like dynamic server side, metadata that's being passed for sharing to Facebook or wherever to get those lovely previews. That's what this is built for. Now, if you don't want to go all the way and use something else and run your own, I have a whole other video that covers doing SEO in Flutter. It's specifically done with Firebase hosting, as well as like a Firebase function, and that was kind of the inspiration for me to go and build a platform to do this for other people. But of course, you can just go that route and check out that video. It's called Flutter. SEO in Flutter, something like that. Easy enough to find. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. Thanks for going through this whole series. I know we're this is a pretty long one. A lot of good stuff in here, though, I think, and I hope it's helped you. And please like and subscribe, share, all the stuff that any other YouTuber would ask you to do at the end of a long series. Thanks for watching, and have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.